Item, of course, is to ask the cameras to leave. And oh yes, I'm going. Right. We might give you a minute early, so for good behavior.
And you think we'll get down here?
Yes.
Okay. You? Put Mike right there.
So.
And then put me there.
Okay, then, colleagues, witnesses, members of the public, I want to, on behalf of the committee, welcome everyone here. Bienvenue à tous. And there's a couple of comments I want to make first, colleagues and witnesses. And since the last meeting, I've given this whole issue some reflection, and I'm a little troubled about the nature of some of the questions, but perhaps more particular, some of the answers given by some of the witnesses in the last Monday's hearing. And it seems to me that some people are used and have used this committee to make personal insinuations against other witnesses, which I consider to be improper. I cautioned one witness, but on reflection, I probably allowed too much latitude to go on, and that latitude will not continue today. So having said that, I want to urge all members of the committee to exhibit a degree of professionalism in the questions that the Canadian public expects. Keep your questions short and to the point. And again, to the witnesses here, I want to thank you for appearing, but I want to remind you to stick to the facts only. The committee will not tolerate any gratuitous comments about other individuals who may be here, who may not be here. Keep your answers short and relevant to the issues and relevant to the questions in hand and relevant to the issues that the committee is investigating. Mr. Williams.
Yeah, and we've had many documents tabled at this committee and offers of documents to be tabled. Is it possible for the clerk to prepare a summary of all documents that have been tabled and have that circulated so we know exactly what this committee has received and what we haven't received for the public record, that we know exactly where we're at?
Yes, that can be done, Mr. Williams. Yeah, that's a good point. Sure.
In particular, I would like the document which was shown by our colleague, Mr. Fitzpatrick, with regard to KPMG be officially tabled.
You tabled that. You gave that to the clerk?
He did.
He did. Okay.
KPMG audit was not. KPMG did not prepare this audit in French. If the committee would oblige to carry out a translation, we would be happy to provide the copy here, and then it can be distributed in both official languages.
Okay. The clerk has indicated he's got a copy of that, and he will have it translated. And once it's translated, it will be provided to all members. But you have to bear in mind that that may take.
In that case, I'd like an English copy.
Okay.
Do we require, I understand my colleagues were in a desire to have an English copy, and therefore I would move that the document be tabled even though it is only in one language and be distributed. And if all members are agreeable to that, then I think we can proceed.
If all members agree to that procedure, that is agreeable. Monsieur Laforêt.
But that it be translated nevertheless.
The document has been tabled. It will immediately be circulated in English only. The committee clerk will proceed forthwith to have it translated. Once it's translated, it probably will take a little bit of time. That will be circulated to all members of the committee also. Okay, then I just want to, a couple of other housekeeping matters. I did read for the record before the last meeting a prepared statement on the issue of parliamentary privilege. That is available to anyone that wants it. You can see the clerk. I don't intend to read it again today. But again, I just want to remind all members, witnesses, that the law of parliamentary privilege applies to these proceedings. And lastly, the steering committee of the committee did decide that all future hearings would be under oath. And I'm going to instruct the clerk now to administer the oath.
State your name and then read this.
Okay. I, Rosalie Burton. The evidence I shall give on this examination shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God.
State your name.
I, Barbara George, swear that the evidence I shall give on this examination shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God.
Thank you. The name.
Je, Paul Roy, jure de dire dans mon...
I, Paul Roy, swear that the evidence I shall give on this examination shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God.
State your name.
I, Mike Frizzell, swear that the evidence I shall give on this examination shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God.
I, Fraser McCauley, swear the evidence I shall give on this examination shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God.
Well, thank you very much. And members, we have before us today Deputy Commissioner Barbara George, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police; Rosalie Burton, former Director General of Human Resources, Royal Canadian Mounted Police; Fraser McCauley, Chief Superintendent, Royal Canadian Mounted Police; Staff Sergeant Mike Frizzell, Strategic and Operational Support, National Child Exploitation Coordination Centre; and as an individual, Paul Roy, who's with the Ontario Police Service. So I want to again welcome each and every one of you. I understand that certain ones, it's not compulsory, that certain ones have an opening statement, and we're just going to take them on the list. And Deputy Commissioner George, I understand you have an open statement, and I turn the floor over to you now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me begin by expressing my appreciation to the committee for allowing me this opportunity to respond to the very serious allegation that has been made against me by the member from Etobicoke Centre. As the member for York West said on Monday, in this process, it is unfair for people to have accusations made against them and not have sufficient time to be able to respond. I therefore welcome this opportunity to address the accusation directed against me, and to respond to any further questions committee members may have. In the course of the committee's meeting on March 28th, the member for Etobicoke Centre suggested that I had perjured myself during my initial testimony almost 2 months ago. Given the severity of the allegation, which the member repeated publicly and to the media, I have been suspended from my duties by the Commissioner of the RCMP pending a full disciplinary investigation. The utterance of the term perjury was the catalyst that changed my life forever. I have proudly served as a member and officer of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police for 29 years, and this is the first time in my entire career that my conduct and integrity have been called into question. Worse still, because of the confusion surrounding these hearings, some press reports have even suggested that I was somehow involved in the problems with the RCMP pension and insurance funds. I was not. Further, I did not and have not resigned from the RCMP. On the evening of the 26th of March 2007, I was asked to step down from my position as Deputy Commissioner Human Resources at the urging of the Commissioner, who told me that while she believed me and felt I had done nothing wrong, it would be in the best interest of the force in light of the increased pressure on the RCMP. This was prior to any allegations having been made against me, 2 days before the hearings of March 28th. I made that very difficult decision in a state of disbelief and shock, and I do not yet know how I managed to drive myself home following that meeting. The arrangement we had reached, which followed her private meetings with other witnesses, was that I would step down and take a combination of educational leave and pre-retirement leave. The reasons for my suspension, which followed the hearings, relate exclusively to issues arising out of testimony before this committee, and in particular, the allegation made by the member for Etobicoke Centre. Indeed, the main purpose for my appearance here today is to address the allegation of perjury, an allegation which is as unfair as it is unfounded. Let me be perfectly clear. At no time did I either mislead this committee or provide false testimony. The evidence and answers which I gave in response to your questions were at all times honest and accurate. When I testified on February 21st, I was asked the following question. Did you or Mr. Zaccardelli order that Staff Sergeant Frizzell be removed? And was it you or Mr. Zaccardelli who ordered that the investigation be shut down? My response was, and I quote, I can state with absolute finality that it was neither Commissioner Zaccardelli nor me who had anything whatsoever to do with, as you say, the removal of Sergeant Frizzell. Mr. Chairman, I stand by that answer. Moreover, I would refer the committee to the testimony given by Assistant Commissioner Gork, where he stated that the order to remove Sergeant Frizzell was made by him in consultation with Inspector Paul Roy of the Ottawa Police Service. Inspector Roy is here today. More specifically, in response to repeated questions from committee members, Assistant Commissioner Gork further confirmed that I had never contacted him to have Sergeant Frizzell removed. Notwithstanding these assurances, the member for Etobicoke Centre tabled a selection of emails which he claims show that I had ordered Sergeant Frizzell's removal. He then quoted for the record a short passage from an email written by Chief Superintendent Doug Lang. It read, and I quote, I have an electronic copy of the written order we served on Frizzell at the request of Assistant Commissioner Gork and Deputy Commissioner George. Mr. Chairman, I have since reviewed the emails which were tabled by the member for Etobicoke Centre, including the email from which he quoted. The committee will note that the email in question was part of an exchange of emails written between Chief Superintendent Lang and Assistant Commissioner Bruce Rogerson. Following the email I have quoted, Assistant Commissioner Rogerson asked Chief Superintendent Lang to clarify my involvement as my name had not appeared on the final order given to Frizzell. Either deliberately or carelessly, the member from Etobicoke Centre failed to read the explanation and the clarification ultimately provided by Chief Superintendent Lang. As Chief Superintendent Lang's explanation accurately details the events in question, I believe it should be quoted in its entirety. I quote, I spoke with Deputy George on the phone during this period, in brackets, before the order was prepared, who provided me further details of Sergeant Frizzell's continuance of this investigation after he had been asked to stop, and what she had deemed as continued harassment of one of her employees by Sergeant Frizzell. I received no formal order from either Assistant Commissioner Gork nor Deputy George, just requests from both to ensure this situation was rectified, and Assistant Commissioner Gork's direction that it be served on Sergeant Frizzell in the form of a written order. I advised both when it had been formally served. Mr. Chairman, these comments further confirm that I did not order the removal of Sergeant Frizzell and that my answer to the committee was accurate. I am deeply troubled by the fact that the member from Etobicoke Centre used a misleading quote, taken grossly out of context, as the basis for alleging that I had lied to this committee and the public. Given the horrific consequences that my family and I have endured as a result of these false claims, it is my sincere hope that this will put to rest any suggestion that I have been dishonest. Mr. Chairman, these emails also reference an issue which has not been fully explained to the committee, the issue of Sergeant Frizzell's conduct during the Ottawa Police Service investigation. Although Inspector Roy is far better able to discuss the problems he had with Sergeant Frizzell during his investigation, I want to be clear about the concerns that I had expressed to others at the time. In June of 2005, Ms. Rosalie Burton told me that some members of her staff were being aggressively interrogated by Sergeant Frizzell. In fact, it was my understanding that at least 2 staff members were so upset after their interviews with Sergeant Frizzell that they had to be sent home. As a career RCMP officer, I can attest that this type of conduct by an investigating officer is neither acceptable nor productive. Shortly thereafter, Sergeant Frizzell left a voicemail message on Ms. Burton's telephone, which he played for the committee during his appearance on March 28th. In the message, Sergeant Frizzell indicated, and I quote, "A criminal act is ongoing and seemingly condoned by senior management." Ms. Burton and Deputy Commissioner Govan both assured me that Sergeant Frizzell had failed to understand the matters he was investigating with respect to the insurance outsourcing. Moreover, it was highly inappropriate for an officer involved in an investigation to leave such a message for someone he subsequently wished to interview. In respect of both complaints, I telephoned Assistant Commissioner Darrell Lafosse and told him of what I had learned, and I asked that he speak with Sergeant Frizzell regarding his interviewing methods. Assistant Commissioner Lafosse, in turn, told me that I should express my concerns to Assistant Commissioner Rogerson, which I did shortly thereafter. In the course of these calls, I was informed that, unbeknownst to me, a decision had already been taken by the Ottawa Police Service to terminate the probity investigation. Upon learning this, I spoke with Chief Superintendent Lang to see what now was being done with respect to Sergeant Frizzell. Chief Superintendent Lang later advised me that he had served Sergeant Frizzell with an order from Assistant Commissioner Gork instructing him to return to his regular duties. A copy of that order was provided to this committee by Commissioner Busson as an attachment to her letter of March 1, 2007. The order states in part, and I quote, "You have been previously advised by Inspector Paul Roy of the Ottawa Police Service to cease and desist any and all investigative activities relative to the Project Probity investigation. This investigative team has now been dismantled. We have now been made aware that despite the instructions you have already received, that you continue to conduct further inquiries relative to this investigation for which you have no mandate or authority." End quote. In the weeks and months after the investigation ended, I came to learn that others had experienced similar problems with Sergeant Frizzell. Mr. Chairman, in support of this, I would like to table an email exchange which took place between myself and Assistant Commissioner Gork following my first appearance before this committee. The email outlines a series of problems that the Ottawa Police Service and others had had with Sergeant Frizzell in the course of the investigation. Again, however, Inspector Roy will be better able to speak to these issues. Mr. Chairman, let me say in closing that I continue to have a great respect for the important work of this committee. For 29 years, I have been a career RCMP officer. My husband was a former RCMP member. Our eldest son is an RCMP member, and our two younger sons hope to join the RCMP after graduating university. We are proud of this force and proud of its members. As difficult as these hearings have been for me personally, for my family, my friends, my supporters, I recognize their role in restoring the public's trust and confidence in the RCMP. I support and applaud your continued efforts to understand what took place during this difficult period. Unfortunately, given the limited time period we have for opening statements, I have not been able to address all of the issues which this committee has heard. To that end, I would be pleased to take any questions you may have on the issues I have raised in my opening statement, or indeed any other issues as well. Thank you. Merci.
Thank you very much, Deputy Commissioner George. The emails that you have to table, do you have them with you now? Okay, and perhaps I'll... Okay, well, thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. We're now going to hear from Rosalie Burton, former Director General of Human Resources.
Mr. Chair, honorable members, thank you for the opportunity to appear before committee today. I appear before you today as a public servant, having more than 20 years' experience in the federal public service, mostly in human resources management. Prior to joining the public service, I obtained an Honours Bachelor of Commerce degree from the University of Ottawa, specializing in human resource management and management information systems. And later in my career, I obtained a master's certificate from Royal Roads University. I started my career up at Chalk River Nuclear Labs, Atomic Energy of Canada. I'd like to start by sharing with you that it was a very proud time in my career when I joined the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. To have the opportunity to contribute to safe homes, safe communities, to know that in some small way I could contribute to the men and women on the front line that protect our citizens, and be part of a proud tradition and a national icon was a highlight in my career and a true honor. My first day with the RCMP was August 27, 2001. I transferred from my position at Treasury Board Secretariat Chief Information Officer Branch to the RCMP's Executive Officer Development and Resourcing section. My role there was to design and implement a suite of leadership development programs, and I completed these tasks successfully. In late fall of 2003, I took on the role of Acting Director General of Organization Renewal and Effectiveness Team, replacing Chief Superintendent Fraser McCauley. On or before September 11, 2003, and prior to my arrival in the Acting Director General role, 12 individuals had been identified to be declared surplus. One of these employees identified for surplus was Denise Ravine, an individual whom I had not had any line responsibility prior to taking on my new role. Due to funding pressures, the HR branch budget had a shortfall of $1.3 million for the fiscal year 2004-2005, and some programs would simply not be funded. I consulted the Public Service Staff Relations Advisor at the RCMP and implemented these budget decisions, ensuring due process was followed. I was appointed by the Public Service Commission as an EX2 Director General effective April 1, 2004. Around this time, I also assumed responsibility for the National Compensation Policy Center, among other entities, and this was as a result of a reorganization of the Human Resources team that was announced in February 2004. I understood my mandate concerning the National Compensation Policy Center to be one of sustaining operations. The employees on this team were working very hard, but by the time I arrived, they had been without their director for several months. Part of my task was to restore morale and bring focus to their work. While sustaining operations, I attended an insurance committee meeting that prompted me to ask several questions pertaining to the administration of the insurance program. I suspected a lack of management controls for our members' insurance program. On November 29, 2004, I requested an internal audit through our Chief Audit Executive with the concurrence of both the Chair of the Insurance Committee and my superior, the Chief Human Resources Officer. Also, at the suggestion of the Executive Assistant to the Chief Human Resources Officer, I contacted an investigator on the criminal investigation, who, as I understood it, was working under the direction of an inspector of Ottawa Police Service, to share my concerns about the insurance program. In my role as Director General, I created the Management Action Plan that consisted of corrective actions to the insurance audit findings. The Management Action Plan was supported by the RCMP Audit Committee, chaired by the Commissioner. These corrective actions were implemented and subsequently reviewed by the Office of the Auditor General, as indicated in Chapter 9 of the Report of the Auditor General, RCMP Pension and Insurance Administration, dated November 2006. Also, as a result of the lessons learned from the audit and an A-base review, I created an organization design for the National Compensation Policy Center, based on current and future work requirements with increased management, oversight, and quality assurance elements. While I do not presume to know the process or procedures that were undertaken in the criminal investigation and the subsequent RCMP internal investigation, I am confident that I exercised my responsibilities in the best interest of the Crown, underpinned by the Values and Ethics Code of the Public Service. Thank you, Mr. Chair, honourable members.
Thank you very much, Ms. Burton. We're going to now hear from Paul Roy from the Ottawa Police Service. I understand, Mr. Roy, you're now retired. Is that correct?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I believe you said yes.
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 Mr. Chairman, the investigation into the RCMP pension fund undertaken by the Ottawa Police between March 2004 and June 2005 was an independent, thorough, and complete criminal investigation. It was concluded with integrity and professionalism, in accordance with the principles of major case management and in keeping with conventional practices in modern Canadian policing.
My name is Paul Roy, and I was the officer in charge of this investigation. By way of background, I am a 32-year veteran of the Ottawa Police Service, having retired last January as an inspector. Over half my career has been spent in the field of criminal investigations. Of relevance to this committee, I spent 5 years with the Professional Standards Section, conducting and managing investigations of other police officers. For the last 5 years prior to retirement, I was a senior officer responsible for first directing the Major Crime Unit and subsequently directing the Property and Enterprise Crime Units, including the Organized Fraud Unit, the High-Tech Crime Unit, and Forensic Identification Services.
The investigation took 15 months. There were 238 interviews, including an interview with the Commissioner of the RCMP. There were 75,000 documents researched. There was a provincial Crown Attorney assigned to the file from the onset. A number of significant investigative techniques were employed. Relevant documents were obtained regardless of where they were held and in spite of the security classification surrounding them. The final report, including several binders, filled a banker's box, and the executive summary was 51 pages long. Why were no criminal charges laid? Gone are the days when police officers in doubt over laying charges can simply let the judge sort it out. Royal commissions and judicial inquiries have reiterated that in Canada, the laying of criminal charges is an extremely serious exercise of public authority. In Ontario, charges will only proceed where there is a reasonable prospect of a conviction, considered to be a higher legal threshold than reasonable and probable grounds to lay a charge called for in the Criminal Code of Canada. In this case, there was no reasonable prospect of criminal conviction. That does not mean, however, that no wrongdoing took place. To the contrary, the Ottawa Police Investigation Report identifies 21 persons at different levels of the RCMP who are alleged to have committed wrongdoings or improper actions, with 14 pages of specific allegations. I would like to tell you how the investigation operated. I was in charge of this investigation. That meant that I made the investigative decisions. In doing so, I met regularly with Ottawa Police Chief Vince Bevan, alone or with Deputy Chief Sue O'Sullivan, and Ottawa Police Superintendent Peter Crosby, my immediate supervisor. We discussed strategies and operational options, but the decisions were mine. In making those decisions, I also met with Mr. Robert Wadden, the assigned provincial Crown Attorney, and Sergeant William Sullivan from the Ottawa Police Service, who worked with me, and met regularly with Ottawa Police Service General Counsel Vincent Westwick, who is also in charge of our professional standards section. I consulted regularly with the investigative team members to elicit their opinions and views. I encourage each member of the team to be involved, to debate, to challenge operational theories and decisions. That is more than just good judge management. It is a test against tunnel vision or rush to judgment, an essential part of the integrity of any investigation. Now I wish to comment on the role of Assistant Commissioner David Gork and the independence of the investigation. It's very difficult to conduct an investigation of this magnitude within a large institution without a contact or liaison person. During this investigation, I met with Assistant Commissioner Gork when I needed something from the RCMP, whether it be resources, facilities, specialized or technical operational support, or access to documents or persons. In each and every case, Assistant Commissioner Gork provided full and complete support to my investigation. At no time did he attempt to interfere or influence me in any way. I did not report to Mr. Gork, nor did I take any direction from him. Indeed, in my opinion, Assistant Commissioner Gork and all the RCMP members assigned to the investigative team put the interest of the investigation ahead of their own interest and those of the RCMP. J'accepte les commentaires de l'avis.
While I accept the comments of the Auditor General and others about the perceived lack of independence, I invite the committee to consider the following. This investigation was directed by the Ottawa Police Service. I was the officer in charge and reported to the chief of the Ottawa Police Service. It started out as a 3-month investigation but lasted 15 months. The decision to increase the duration and magnitude was mine. The Crown assigned to the investigation was from the Office of the Provincial Crown Attorney and was involved throughout the investigation, not just at the end. The Ottawa Police ordered and relied on an independent forensic audit. The results of the investigation, it based its conclusions on this audit. The results of the investigation were announced publicly by the Ottawa Police in a media conference on June 27, 2005. There was no influence attempted or exercised in relation to this investigation. This investigation uncovered all the wrongdoing, mismanagement, unethical behavior that existed and outlined detailed evidence as to who was accountable for such actions regardless of their rank or position within the RCMP. The report provided was detailed and a complete review of all the findings. I presented my final report to Chief Bevan, who in turn delivered it personally to the Commissioner of the RCMP. I am fully committed to cooperating with this committee and the independent investigation called by the government. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We're going to now start the first round. We can go 8 minutes. Mr. Wisniewski, 8 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and I'd like to thank all the witnesses for coming to the committee meeting today. Staff Sergeant Frizzell, once again we heard Deputy Commissioner Barb George. In fact, she quoted her previous statement before committee that with absolute finality that neither the Commissioner nor myself had anything whatsoever to do with the removal of Sergeant Frizzell. March 28th, I tabled several emails that seemed to indicate quite the opposite. Staff Sergeant Frizzell, has Assistant Commissioner Bruce Rogerson spoken with you since? What are his recollections, and would you know whether he's willing to appear before our committee?
We're getting into situations here. We're dealing with people's reputations, and that question is direct hearsay, is what it is. If it is important to bring Mr. Bruce Rogerson, you said?
Yes. Well,
we'll have to do it, but we cannot get the statements of Bruce Rogerson through Mr. Frizzell. I really, and I know it's not a judicial hearing, it's not a judicial proceedings, but we have to follow some kind of process when we're involved in a matter this serious. And again, I'd try and stick to the facts.
Sure. With that sort of indication, I agree, and I'd like to request that this committee call Assistant Commissioner Bruce Rogerson before the committee.
If you can, we're not going to deal with that now, Mr. Wisniewski, but if you can can lay the framework that's important witness, we'll certainly consider it. But again, it's not my decision, of course, it's up to the steering committee. But again, if there's anything factual that Mr. Frizzell can add, please continue.
Kind of feel like cannon fodder here, especially Ms. George complaining to the committee about how she was treated, and then she sat here and made allegations against me, excuse me, that I've heard for the first time. I'm not sure how the Chief Human Resources Officer justifies saying I was such a bad person, and yet nobody ever sat down with me and explained to me all these allegations. I would have liked a chance back then to deal with it. But that aside, Ms. George contacted me on the Thursday before I was removed, her office did, asking to see me. I said yes. Then I got thinking about it, called back and asked why. Long story short, I was told that it was about a phone call I had made. Now, obviously it's the phone call I made to Ms. Burton, but at the time I believed it was a phone call that I had made to Great West Life when I'd learned about $500,000 being taken out of the insurance fund. Now, Ms. George has been nice enough to say that I failed to understand the intricacies of that investigation. No one has ever pointed that out to me. In fact, I made a presentation directly to Ms. George on February of this year, where Ms. George would have had plenty of opportunity to set me straight or realize I was pretty serious and have somebody else set me straight. Instead, out of that meeting, Mr. Gork sent me an email telling me, I want to thank both of you, especially Mike, not only for all the work you've done, but for your ability to put it together in a package that someone as untrained as myself can understand. You did a great job this AM with the CHRO, Mike. You bring credit not only to the investigation, but to yourself. Good on you. That was February of 2005. Anyway, so I think that it's to do with this money. I find out otherwise. I'm told that Ms. George is gunning for me. You've heard about her trip to Mr. LaFosse. Anyway, that aside, come Monday morning, when I was supposed to go and see her, I hadn't heard back from her on why she wanted to see me. I felt that was important because I felt she was involved in removing this money from the insurance plans. So I sent her an email that morning. I would like to meet with you to discuss further monies that have been removed from the members' insurance plans. But if the topic is something else, then, as per my last email, I would appreciate knowing what it is so that I might properly prepare. That email was sent at 10:22. I was supposed to see Ms. George in her office at 10:30. It was within 45 minutes of that Mr. Lang and Mr. Newman showed up at my door to give me the famous order you've all heard about. Mr. Newman, there was no mention of anything to do with Ottawa other than the line that Ms. George mentioned when I challenged it. Mr. Lang didn't know anything about it. But Mr. Newman was extremely preoccupied with the fact that I should have been at the CHRO's office and I wasn't. And how dare I not show up at the CHRO's office as demanded? All I said to him was, you know, there's an awful lot of ranks, as you can clearly see, between myself and the Chief Human Resources Officer of the RCMP. It is not appropriate for her to be calling me there, and certainly not appropriate for her to be calling me there without me knowing why. There was absolutely no question in my mind, due to the conversation with Mr. Newman, due to the emails, due to the fact that I was supposed to be in her office at that time, that I was being removed from the investigation because of Ms. George and the money that had been taken out of the insurance plans. Long answer.
Before we proceed to the next question, you referred to a number of emails. Have those emails been tabled? And if they have not, can you table them, please?
No, they have not been tabled.
And you will table them?
If I'm permitted to, I will, yes.
Well, you are permitted. Instructed, I guess, would be the better word. Yeah.
Chief Superintendent McCauley, are you aware of any other details or conversations with any of the assistant commissioners or any other detail that you could provide us on this particular removal?
I had a conversation mid-June, just prior to Mr. Frizzell's removal, and that was with my boss, Assistant Commissioner LaFosse. He had come in one morning and asked me to go see him. I sat in his office and he advised me he'd just got a phone call from Deputy Commissioner George looking for him to remove Mike Frizzell from the investigation, and that he had directed her to Bruce Rogerson. The only other time I've had a conversation was the next time I had the conversation was on shortly after the 21st of February. Mr. LaFosse was able at one point to see the Blues, and his exact quote to me is, "Why did she lie? She knows she called me." So we've had a couple of conversations since then around that same subject.
Thank you. Chair, I'd like to table a document, a request for investigation from Mr. Ron Lewis to Deputy Commissioner Barb George, which in its original form had a 16-page attachment of violations from January 5th of 2004. My question relates to this document. It's to Ms. George. Ms. George, what did you do with this document?
Mr. Chair, I'm not aware of the document. Could I see the document, please? Mr. Chair, I don't recall seeing this document, but what it is, it's Ron Lewis asking me to go forward with unsolicited complaints from senior officers concerning the conduct of the former CHRO, Jim Iwanovich. It outlines a couple of the issues, and it outlines consequences of inaction, etc. Now, when Ron Lewis testified on Monday of this week, he talked to the fact that he and I had met extensively in my office, and at which time I agreed with Ron Lewis that I could not carry out the functions as CHRO if the RCMP did not call for a criminal investigation. And the next morning I told him that I would go in and speak with the commissioner and say exactly that we needed to have a criminal investigation called. If this document was in my hands, it might have gone forward. I'm not in my office at the moment, so I can't track it. But as Ron Lewis attested to himself, I did go back to the commissioner after our long meeting with Ron Lewis and say to the commissioner that I could not continue to function. In fact, it would be getting nowhere if he didn't call a criminal investigation into this situation that was still bubbling up. Mr. Chair, may I respond to both Mr. Frizzell and Mr. McCauley's comments, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
Point of order, yeah.
We're talking about an email, and we're talking about criminal investigation. What's the date of that email, and what's
All going to be
time?
tabled, Mr. Williams.
Yeah, but
yes.
I want to know the date. So is this part of that 2-day criminal investigation or not?
It's January 5th, 2004. And this, when Ron Lewis was testifying on on Monday, he was talking about a conversation that he and I had, and he said November. In my mind, as I'm listening to his conversation, that meeting between us took place in early January, and he was laying out all of the noise around it, and at the end of it I said, you know, Ron, I agree, we need to have a criminal investigation called into this matter. Otherwise, it's useless. No CHRO can move forward. Okay.
And all those documents will be tabled.
So, with regards to Mr. Frizzell's comments about Doug Lang, etc., I'll put it all in together, and Mr. McCauley's. When Rosalie Burton came into my office and talked about the sad state that the witnesses were in following interviews by Sergeant Frizzell, we talked about the fact that NCPC was being decimated and that these people were witnesses. What I did was I immediately picked up the phone and spoke with Assistant Commissioner LaFosse, and I asked him if somebody could speak with Sergeant Frizzell to ask him to tone down his methodology, his interviewing methodology. For people to run screaming out of the office after a witness interview is simply not productive and not normal. So Assistant Commissioner LaFosse asked me to speak with Bruce Rogerson, and I told him the same thing. Now, at about the same time, Rosalie Burton forwarded me an email. It was a voicemail which she had put to paper from Staff Sergeant Frizzell to her, outlining serious wrongdoing going on with the insurances. Now, I don't have a background in insurance, but I knew that Rosalie had been heavily involved in correcting the gaps in the insurance file for the RCMP, and that she had been working closely with corporate, and in particular Deputy Commissioner Paul Gauvin. Upon receipt of this email, I took it forward to Paul Gauvin, and I asked him, I said, this looks like there are still continuing wrongdoing or crimes being committed within the insurance. Paul said, Barb, I'm telling you right now, there is nothing there. Everything that needs to be done to correct the insurances is done. He said, you can rest assured that your members are covered with life and disability. Every other insurance is covered. What the problem is that the RCMP never did and still doesn't have the authority to administer insurance programs for our members. I asked him about the premiums. I said, our members are thinking that the premium costs are going to double or triple. He said, a little, but really it's only 2.5% for administrative fees, because that's how the insurance is paid.
George, I'm going to move now to Monsieur Laforêt with minutes. Monsieur Laforêt.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. McCauley, when you appeared before the committee on March 28th, you told us that after having collected, if you will, several elements of information which pointed to the problems we're discussing today, problems that you had pinpointed with Ms. Revine's help, and you had revealed these allegations to Mr. Zaccardelli and Ms. George. You said that Ms. George told you clearly that you were alone on your island and that no one would tell the truth. That's what you told us at that meeting. You said that you had raised these issues and that she thought you were naive if you should think that anyone would stand by you in this type of situation. Is that what you told us at that meeting?
Madame George.
Ms. George, do you agree with Mr. McCauley's statement?
Vous n'êtes pas d'accord avec ça?
You don't agree?
If I may elaborate?
Oui.
Okay. Following Commissioner Zaccardelli's severe disappointment with Chief Superintendent McCauley's failure to come forward in a timely manner with the knowledge that he had concerning the alleged wrongdoings in the HR and corporate areas, he had a meeting with him. And my recollection of that meeting, because I was there too, the Commissioner was there speaking with Fraser McCauley, and I was there too. There were three of us in that room. And I should tell this committee that Chief Superintendent McCauley had no intention whatsoever of coming in to see the Commissioner and relaying to him exactly what it was he knew listed as noise around the outsourcing and other issues. I made that appointment early that morning. I asked the Commissioner if I could come over and see him, and I said, Commissioner, I would like to bring Fraser McCauley. Will you listen? He said, yes, bring him in. So I went across the street to the Hampton Inn where there was a meeting in place, an HRMT meeting. I looked at Mr. McCauley and I said, Fraser, you're coming with me. We are going to see the Commissioner. He was not happy about that. We went in, we sat down, the three of us, and I introduced it. I said, Commissioner, Fraser has got some information here. I've heard little bits of it, but I think there's a lot of information that you need to hear with regards to what's going on in the HR sector and possibly corporate. Fraser sat down and started to relate to the Commissioner, face to face, all of the alleged wrongdoings, from contract splitting to nepotism to harassment of employees, to overpayment of, and on and on and on and on and went. At the end of that conversation, the Commissioner, to my recollection, asked Fraser two questions. He said, Fraser, how long have you known about this? Mr. McCauley answered, a year, maybe longer. Next question from the Commissioner. Fraser, when were you going to come and tell me about this? Fraser's answer, I wasn't. I report to Jimmy Wanovich. He's my boss. He'll kill you. I've got to look out for my career. And the Commissioner said, Fraser, you should let me look out for his career. Now, following this, okay, we're now, the Commissioner says, well, he has to be held accountable. We have to look at giving him an opportunity. He's young, 22 years service. He had a chief superintendent's rank. But I was going to make...
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Chairman, as with the previous meeting, we are dealing with a difficult situation. We have people who have sworn to tell the truth under oath, and they are giving us conflicting versions. These people are saying radically different things, and I think this points to the importance of the motion adopted last time, which is that it called for a full public inquiry of the Minister of Public Safety so we can get at the bottom of things. We've heard this testimony twice already. I'll continue with what time is left for me, but I think it's important that we hold a full-fledged public inquiry. Ms. Burton, Ms. Revine provided us with documents, and she indicated in her documents that you had probably signed a contract of over $700,000 to review services contracted with Deloitte and Touche. Did you in fact sign that contract with a private sector company to do work which Ms. Revine herself could have done?
Mr. Chair, without seeing the actual document, it's difficult for me to answer. I don't know the time frame. I don't know the contract in question, and I don't know the dollar amount.
Entre
If it's
2003 et
available,
2005, Madame.
It was between 2002 and 2005. I don't know what the specific date was when you arrived, but Ms. Revine told us, indicated in the documents she submitted to us, you opposed to her returning to her position, and your office agreed that her name should be on the priority list. However, in the meantime, you signed a contract for over $700,000 on implementing a strategic leadership initiative with a consulting company. These were two initiatives which Ms. Revine had already been involved in, and which and this is work she could have done herself. But, however, you signed on to a $700,000 contract with the RCMP. If you can't answer now, we would appreciate your answer in writing.
As a result of the Management Action Plan, where I put corrective actions in for the insurance, against the insurance audit findings, part of the corrective action there was to conduct an A-base of the National Compensation Policy Center, not the entire HR directorate or branch or team. So I have no knowledge of the A-base. I've not seen the A-base that Ms. Revine was doing or had done. I know that I was directed and endorsed by the audit committee to do an A-base review only on what we call NCPC, the National Compensation Policy Center. That was part of the corrective measures that we put in response to the audit, the RCMP internal audit, and was subsequently reviewed by the Office of the Auditor General. My best recollection is that it was not to that amount.
Merci.
Ms. Burt, can you give us in writing to the committee a full and complete details of the contract that Mr. Laforêt was referring to, when it was signed, your involvement, and the details, all details?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Mr. Laforêt, it's... Okay, merci beaucoup, Mr. Laforêt. Mr. Williams, 8 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Ms. George, you have reviewed the testimony, and I presume that you read the chair's opening remarks the other day, where he said that your witnesses are required to give fulsome answers to the committee. This is not a court of law where you're in defense. You're protected by parliamentary privilege. Therefore, fulsome answers are what we expect and we require. I'll go back to your testimony on the February 21st, where, first of all, I talked about an email from Bruce Rogerson to Fraser McCauley prior to Mr. McCauley appearing before the committee. And he said, Barb George and Darrell LaFosse then made me, and then Dave Gork, surrounding Mike for Mr. Frizzell's harassing behavior, and he needed to be dealt with swiftly. And as we are aware of the calls were made, Dave and Barb were consulted, and they were both advised of the order served, whereby Frizzell was removed from his office. And I believe in your opening statement you also mentioned that you were advised when the thing was formally served. I think you acknowledged that. Now, on February 21st you said, I can state with absolute finality that it was neither Commissioner Zaccardelli nor me who had anything whatsoever to do with, as you say, the removal of Sergeant Frizzell. And I acknowledge that you did not give the order, but you acknowledge that you were aware it was all happening. Mr. Wisniewski says, can you tell us who it was? And you say, and I quote, no, I'm not aware of who it was. The best I can state is that when Sergeant Frizzell left, I understood that he returned to his home division. Now, you were aware of the circumstances regarding the removal of Mr. Frizzell. I'm not asking if you gave the order. I'm not asking if you made the decision. I'm just saying you were aware. Am I correct?
The question was...
No,
well,
no, I said
yes.
The question was about who removed Sergeant Frizzell. Now, let me give the quotes again. You stated, I can state with absolute finality there was neither Commissioner Zaccardelli nor me who had anything whatsoever to do with, as you say, the removal of Sergeant Frizzell. I said and I acknowledge you didn't give the order. Mr. Wisniewski then asked you, can you tell us who it was? And you replied, no, I am not aware of who it was. The best I can state is that when Sergeant Frizzell left, I understood he was to return to his home division. Now remember, you're required to give fulsome answers here. You were aware of the circumstances regarding Mr. Frizzell's removal from that position.
I was aware that that Sergeant Frizzell had been ordered back to his home base. I could not, and I did not have any document before me to tell you who had signed off on that document. There's a further along when you ask me, well, are you aware? Do you know who signed off on the document?
No,
I'm answering you,
You're
sir.
trying to get too legal here because Mr. Rogerson said, we are aware of the calls that were made to Dave Gork and Barb George, who were consulted, and they were both advised of the orders served whereby Frizzell was removed from his office. There were telephone calls.
Yes, there was a document.
You were aware of the circumstances.
I was aware that this gentleman was being removed that day because Doug Lang called me. I did not know, sir. I did not know who signed off on that and who took that decision. When you told me, or the chair asked me not to speculate, I knew it would either have been Inspector Roy or Dave Gork, because obviously these were the two that were leading. Well, Inspector Roy was leading the investigation, but Dave Gork was more or less managing our CMP members. I did not know who gave that order, sir.
I think, Madam George, that your answers are more legal than fulsome, and that's my opinion, and I'm going to stick to it. Now, moving on the same issue, Mr. Wisniewski again asked you, was it Mr. Gork who made the decision to have Mr. Frizzell removed? And you responded, I can speculate if you wish me to speculate. I wasn't involved in the criminal investigation. And I can appreciate that you weren't involved in the criminal investigation. But at no point in time did you divulge to this committee that you had telephone calls with Mr. Gork and others regarding the removal of Mr. Frizzell.
I think what is very important to do here, the reason I made my phone calls on Mr. Frizzell, who, by the way, is quite right when he says he was never approached by anybody regarding his interviewing techniques. Nobody ever did speak with him. I know that now. I had a director general coming to me telling me that NCPC is... No, sir, this is critical. This is critical. There are two issues here. You're asking me if I knew who took the order or gave the order. I did not, sir. The reason I didn't bring in...
My question was, I said, you were aware because of phone calls and you didn't volunteer that information to this committee.
I was not aware who made the decision to remove Sergeant Frizzell.
You're missing my point, Ms. George. I said you were aware of the phone calls that you had regarding the decision to dismiss or remove Mr. Frizzell and the fact that he was going to be removed and the fact that he had been removed, and you did not volunteer that information to the committee. Am I correct?
You didn't ask me, was I aware whether he was going to go? No, sir, I'm being very fair with you. I made those phone calls to address an HR issue of possible abuse or harassment of employees. And if you do, and I'm sure you understand the Treasury Board guidelines, which also ruled the RCMP, I had to take action.
Madam George, I have to interrupt. You're trying to obfuscate the issue.
I'm not, sir.
I asked you, why did you not volunteer the information that you had discussions with people who were involved in the decision to remove Mr. Frizzell? Why did you not volunteer that information to this committee?
Sir, when I answered the question, I answered it honestly. I didn't. You asked me who made the decision, and did I know? I did not know whether it was Assistant Commissioner Gork
You're missing my point. I said, why did you not volunteer the information that you had discussions with these people?
Because it had nothing to do with who took the decision.
Okay, let me move on. Mr. Chairman, again, Mr. Brzezinski asking and stated, and nobody seems to know who gave that order. And you replied, Ms. George, I never was and am not now in charge of the sergeant we are speaking about right now. A true statement, but a misleading statement. You were asked who gave the order, and you changed the subject entirely to state you weren't in charge of the sergeant. Why did you make a misleading statement to the committee?
It's not misleading to say I was not in charge of the sergeant. And I had repeated 3 times by now, I did not know which of the 2 gentlemen, either Inspector Roy or Assistant Commissioner Gork, would have given the order to have him removed.
I go back to the point that you're expected to give fulsome answers to the questions at this committee, and when you knew it was one of 2 people, and you go off on a different tangent to avoid answering the question, to me that's a misleading statement. But let me go on, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair, if I may appoint, I offered to speculate, and if when Dave Gork gave me the email and told me who was, he said, Barb, who would you have said? Because you said don't speculate. I would have said that it was Inspector Gork. It's the Assistant Commissioner Gork who gave. He said, well, I did, but through Paul Roy.
Okay, let me continue on. This is later on, Mr. Chairman.
2 seconds, Mr. Williams.
Okay, this is my last question. It was asked for you to submit a letter to this committee, and I suggest that Commissioner, assisted by Ms. George, undertake to provide us in writing the circumstances surrounding the so-called alleged dismissal of Sergeant Frizzell. And Mr. Brzezinski says, I would assume that if someone is being removed, there would be an actual document that would be served. Right. And you respond, Ms. George, if such a document exists, we will get that and provide it to you. You were aware that a document existed. You had been told that he had been served formally, weren't you?
This was years ago, and I didn't know whether that document, I could get my hands on it. We went back.
Well, I didn't ask you if you got hands on it. I said, were you aware of it?
I had been told that he had, and there was a document. It came to me on the email. Mr. Williams, whether or not I could have gotten my hands on that document remains to be seen. In fact, it was retrieved. And it was also attached to the letter. Do you know what wasn't attached to the letter, Mr. Williams? And it's very unfortunate. I went to Assistant Commissioner Gork, who was still in Lyon, and I asked him 3 questions. Who took the decision to remove him? What were the circumstances around it? How was it effected? Actually 4. And what effect did it have, if any, on Sergeant Frizzell's career? He wrote me a very fulsome email, which I presented to the Commissioner. And I said, you know what? Here are the answers that the committee is looking for regarding the dismissal or removal of Sergeant Frizzell, who, by the way, Inspector Roy says he wasn't removed. He was simply turned back because the whole team was dismantled. It's a point, Mr. Williams. It's an important point. I asked that email be given to the... I think that this letter
was a removal. It wasn't a dismantlement of the investigation.
Well, I could let Inspector Roy speak to that. But that email gave everything that we needed, and I asked that email be attached to the letter to go back to this committee.
Yeah, why wasn't it?
The decision was taken...
By?
Between the Commissioner, I believe, and DOJ to just...
Who's DOJ?
Department of Justice that work with the RCMP, to keep it to a minimal. And the reason they kept...
We asked for a fulsome report, Mr. Chairman. What's this Department of Justice and the RCMP deciding on their own that they're not going to tell us the information that we asked for?
Don't ask me, Mr. Williams.
Well, I think we should be asking them.
The logic that was put forward, committee members, was that since Assistant Commissioner Gork was being flown in from Lyon and he would be here in person, that it would be better to hear from him in person, alive and fresh, to give you all of the details. That was the decision that was taken, and I wasn't part of it.
I have to take a severe exception to these decisions, Mr. Chairman. This committee, a parliamentary committee, asks for full explanation. All we get is a simple letter of dismissal of the Sergeant Frizzell, and now we find out there was discussion with the Department of Justice and the senior RCMP to keep this committee in the dark. That cannot be allowed to stand.
Now, just to follow up on that point, and okay, we're going to move on, Mr. Williams, but are you telling us, now I just want to get this absolutely clear, that since you testified the last hearing and you were to provide a report, that there was meetings with the Department of Justice and they decided not to provide the information?
Mr. Chair, we have our own internal people, our legal people, who were sitting with us when we were looking at this letter. And besides the document that had been retrieved to Sergeant Frizzell, there was also the email that came in from Assistant Commissioner Bork, which outlined in paragraph form exactly what led up to the removal. And I presented that at a meeting. Okay, our legal people were there, the commissioner was there, and I said, this is it right here. This explains to the committee exactly how this occurred. It was decided that to keep it simple, just attach the memorandum to Sergeant Frizzell, and then David Gork would be here in person to respond to any and every question that the committee would put before him.
But David Gork was here the day you were here.
No, David Gork came after I did.
Okay, but did he?
I was on the 21st.
Did he table that email?
I don't believe he did, but that's why I brought the email today.
Okay. Well, okay. Then you're going to table it today.
Yes, and it's translated as well.
Okay. So perhaps I'll get the clerk to do that. Okay, then we're going to move on. I'm sure somebody want to come back to that, but we do have the rules. Mr. Christopherson, 8 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you all for your attendance here today. Let me just say at the outset that I appreciate Mr. Williams' feeling of outrage, and the more we dig, the more we realize that there's more to find. And I would just point out that the investigation that's been called into this could get no closer to this issue that Mr. Williams just raised than we did. In fact, less so. We at least have put people under oath. The investigator can't do that. The investigator can't command documents, and even if they do, there's nothing to require them to make those documents part of the final submission. And that's the problem, and I would hope it would help a lot. And I say this very sincerely, it would help a lot if the Conservative members moved from abstention to lending your considerable weight to the call for a proper judicial inquiry so these witnesses can have the protection that they need and ultimately will get to the truth, because we're not here. We're going to keep going in circles. We're going to keep doing this because it's better than that investigation, but this is far from perfect. And every time we go around the table, to me, it just reinforces that much more that what the RCMP deserve, what the officers of the RCMP deserve, and what the Canadian public deserve is a proper, full public inquiry. And we're not going to stop hammering away at that until we bloody well get one. If I can, Deputy, I'd like to return to some of your comments. And by the way, I have a great deal of sympathy for the concerns you raised at the beginning. We're no further closer to getting to the truth than we were at the beginning. I have no idea at the end of the day who's going to be held responsible, but I really worry about people being wronged in this process. So I appreciate what you said, Deputy, but as you know, we've got to persevere. We've got to do the best we can. Hopefully the Minister will step in and give us tools to do a better job. But when you met with us the last time, you said, and I quote, "It was felt at that time by the then Commissioner that Chief Superintendent Macaulay would benefit from a secondment." He was actually given a short secondment with the military, end quote. Can I ask you to just give us your recollection of that discussion that you had with the Commissioner, given that the Commissioner, and I'm going from memory so I stand to be corrected, but the former Commissioner's testimony stated that he thought that Chief Superintendent Macaulay had made some kind of a mistake, and that by going off to DND he could sort of reclaim his reputation and get his career back on track. That didn't sound to me like it was only about furthering Chief Superintendent Macaulay's career, and he has given direct testimony that he believes he was removed for other reasons, meaning bringing forward these issues. Could you just tell us what that conversation was, as you recall it, with the former Commissioner about how this was going to be a benefit to Chief Superintendent Macaulay's career?
Yes, I can. Mr. Chair, there was a lot of conversation following what the Commissioner saw as a grave disappointment in the fact that Chief Superintendent Macaulay had not come forward on a timely basis to tell him about the issues that were running rampant in NCPC, HR, and corporate. And remember, as I said, according to the Commissioner, he heard Macaulay say, well, I knew about it for a year and a half. I heard I knew about it for a year, maybe more. So to the Commissioner, He was gravely disappointed that had he come forward sooner, a year ago maybe, that we could have gotten our teeth into this situation, and whatever wrongdoing was ongoing, whatever was happening with the pension plan, whatever was happening with the insurances and God knows what else, could have been seen to much sooner, and probably we wouldn't have gotten into the state that it was. Now, having said that, the commissioner said, you know, this person was promoted early, 22 years of service to a chief superintendent. What he needs is to go somewhere to learn some courage and some leadership. Look at some places where he can go. That's what he said. There was a little bit of talk about returning him to E Division for a while, because that's the operational division, I think, from whence he came. Finally, we settled on D&D. They have a marvelous military ethos. They're famous for their leadership, and so that's where that came. It was a 2-year secondment, and Macaulay spent 7 months there.
Thank you. I'd be interested, Chief Superintendent Macaulay, as to, and you may have already given testimony to this, I accept that may have happened, but nonetheless, when did you hear about this? Was it in writing? Was it personal? Who'd you hear it from, and exactly what did they say was the reason for the secondment?
The first time was on August 21st that I was leaving. That was at 5 p.m. in Deputy Commissioner, well, at that time, Assistant Commissioner Barb George's office. And I was being removed because of the fact that I had not delivered on Hermes and the way I handled the complaint against Dominic Krupe. And then it was, Assistant Commissioner George advised me that I should not have taken it to the level that I had. And then she added that I had sat on the information too long. This sat on the information too long has haunted me for the 3.5 years. Yesterday, or Monday, Commissioner Zaccardelli says 1.5 years. I have to table with you today my transfer notice, well, not my transfer notice, but my employment record, which will show you that if I knew for 1.5 years, I knew the day I arrived into my new job in HR as the Chief Superintendent. Because I arrived there exactly 17 months before I was in his office. The 1.5 years, this whole investigation, there is nobody that can, even now that it's all done, we are now 2007, there is nobody that can tell me or demonstrate to me how it's even possible that I knew ahead of that time. I knew on May 28th, and even then I didn't really know on May 28th. On May 28th, I received a phone call from Jim Iwanovich, who had been visited by Assistant Commissioner Spice and Ron Lewis in regards to his behaviors. He was upset that they had accused him of some things and felt that I was one of the officers that was informing Ron as to his behaviors. It just doesn't make any sense. From there, I came back and I spoke to Denise Revine, who was doing the A-base. If you look at the allegations on June 17th, they are written by Denise Revine in consultation with me. I knew nothing before that time. Nobody has put any evidence that I knew before that time. During my conversations with these folks to try to even correct it once it was told to me, I explained and started to find out things such as the fact that it had come to the attention of the RCMP in 2002, and that the HR folks had actually built a form where you had to tick off whether or not the person you were now hiring was in your family. They built an HR form in 2002, not where I was, unbeknownst to me. Okay. So they knew.
Okay, thank you. See, my concern about this, Deputy, is that the answer that you gave certainly left the impression that far from being a punishment, it was some kind of a career favor. Now, that could be just because the answer wasn't as complete as it could have been, but that was the concern there. If I can, I want to, another quote, Deputy. This is you speaking, I'm being careful with regard to the privacy concerns here, but I understand, and the transcript shows bracket, Sergeant Frizzell left, bracket, for health reasons. Do you still stand by that, Deputy, that happened because of health reasons?
When I had a conversation with Chief Superintendent Doug Lang, I asked him, I said, how is he all right? And he says, well, Barbie says, I believe he's going to be off sick for a while. He's not feeling very good about it. So that's what I heard, and that's all I can say to that.
Okay.
If I can make a point, please, about Mr. Macaulay's talking about when he knew what when. Vern White, who is about to become the new chief for Ottawa Police, has had a conversation with me, and he recalls a conversation, and I believe Chief Superintendent Macaulay's referred to it.
We're not going to get into conversations with Mr. White. We'll move on to Mr. Wisniewski.
Thank you, Chair. Ms. George, if I could request, I had spoken to you before the end of the previous round about this letter from Mr. Lewis, dated 5th of January of 2004. Could you provide us with any documentation, emails, anything you might have on file that would show action on this? Because the record up to this point shows that nothing transpired for another 3 months until such time that Mr. Lewis went to Treasury Board, Minister McClellan, and then a couple days afterwards, the Ottawa Police began their investigation. But I'd like to move on to another part of your testimony, Ms. George, dealing with Mr. Krupe and his rampant nepotism. I asked you on February 21st whether Mr. Krupe got 18 months leave with pay. Your answer was, short and succinct, Mr. Krupe was suspended. I asked, with pay? You said yes. Now, before the committee, Mr. Zaccardelli says that when, and I repeat again that day, this is quote, I repeat again that day that I received the audit report. That day, I appointed Barb George as the new Chief Human Resources Officer with the instructions to remove Krupe from his position. And then he went on to say, if that was not immediate, etc. Now, you just told us, and referenced when Mr. Williams was questioning you, you'd referenced your knowledge of Treasury Board guidelines. The Public Service Staff Regulation Act states, under point H1E, if the alleged misconduct so warrants, suspend the employee from duty immediately. That's what Mr. Zaccardelli underlined that he did, and obtain approval without delay. Well, he instructed you to do that. Tell the employee that she is suspended from duty without pay, pending investigation of her alleged misconduct, and that it will be confirmed in writing. Now, you quite clearly said you suspended him, and you suspended him with pay. Your guidelines say that that should not have happened. Why?
With Mr. Krupe, when I spoke with him after Jimmy Wanovich had resigned, I said, Don, you're going to have to go home because your presence here is upsetting people. And he protested. He said, Barb, I've only done what Jimmy Wanovich asked me to do. So what kind of leave am I on? I said, well, go home on administrative leave, and I will check with Treasury Board.
Chair, if Mr. Zaccardelli was absolutely clear. When he saw the audit report, there was a concern of grave misconduct, and he instructed you to have him removed immediately.
And
you reference guidelines, and the guidelines don't provide any wiggle room. They clearly state,
well,
without pay, 18 months he received pay. How did you make that decision?
I called the Treasury Board at a very high level, and I said, here's the situation. The CHRO has resigned. He's gone home. I now have the director of NCPC. Do I have the grounds to suspend him without pay? And they said, well, what are the circumstances? I said, a criminal investigation.
Do you have a document that can verify that it wasn't you that made that decision?
I have a witness who can confirm that he told me that. He said, Barb, if there are no criminal charges pending on this individual, you're quite within your rights to send him home.
The guidelines are quite clear.
Let her continue on, Mr. Wisniewski. Please answer the question.
Yes. So I phoned the Treasury Board and I said, I gave them the circumstances. I said, can I take away this man's livelihood? There are no criminal charges. There's a lot of noise right now. It will be investigated. Answer, you are well within your rights to send him home with pay until such time as there will be charges or it looks like you're about to lay charges. That did happen later on. At this point, Mr. Krupe refused to accept it because he was on ODS, off-duty sick, and shortly thereafter he resigned.
Ms. Burton, do you think you were a suspect in a criminal investigation?
Do I think I was a suspect?
Yes.
No.
Do you think you were a person of interest? Put it that way.
I've read that in a transcript, and that was the first I saw of that.
Mr. Frizzell, would you like to comment on this?
First off, I just want to set the record straight here as to, since credibility is such a huge issue here, I just went back through my notebook. Before I came here today, earlier in the week, I asked for documents from the investigation so that I could refresh my memory. I was denied those. But I do have my notebook. The last person I interviewed that was an employee of these folks here was just over 3 weeks before this panicked set of phone calls to get rid of me. That person was a middle-aged man who I distinctly remember not running, yelling and screaming from the interview room. The last person I interviewed before that from the HR shop was months before that, because I had turned my attention to contractors. So I would really like to know who these people are that have made these allegations. I would also like to know, Ms. George being a police officer, why there wasn't an investigation and why why we didn't get both sides of the story there. As far as person of interest goes, it's semantics. Ms. Burton was part of the insurance committee. She led that meeting that ended up with a discrepancy between people who were there. The minutes say that the money was authorized. The people who were there that I spoke to said that didn't happen at all. So she most definitely would have been spoken to had there ever been an investigation.
Mr. Frizzell, in your tape recording that you played into our record here, you stated over $500,000 had been improperly taken out of the rank and file's insurance fund. Who's the person who gave that order?
I believe it was Ms. George.
I'd like to table a document. It's dated March 16th of 2005, 3 months after Mr. Lewis had requested that a criminal investigation begin. It's referenced in the previous document. It's a letter from Deputy Commissioner Barb George to Peter Foley, Regional Director, Group Marketing, Great West Life Assurance Company. It'll be on the record so people can read the full text, but it references an amount of $540,327.36, and there's direction here to Mr. Foley for it to be charged to the insurance plans. We would appreciate this refund no later than March 25th, 2005, so that we can adjust our books for the fiscal year end March 31st, 2005.
Okay, then you're going to table that, and that'll be translated, and that'll be circulated to all the members forthwith. Mr. Poilevre, 8 minutes.
Ms. George, are you saying the first time you learned of the reason for Mr. Frizzell's removal from the investigation was in this email that you received just a couple of months ago? Before that, you had no idea why he was removed?
When I got the call talking about his interviewing techniques.
No, actually, my question was...
I need to put it in context
before we start, I'm going to be very clear. I'm not going to tolerate any ragging of the puck. I want to know... I'm not going to tolerate any ragging of the puck here. I have a very clear question. Was February 25th, 2007 really the first time you learned of the reason for Mr. Frizzell's dismissal? It would be very simple. Either you knew before or you did not know before.
I had known that they had had difficulty with him. Okay, that there was difficulty.
And when
with
did you
him.
know
That
that?
was very nebulous.
When did you know that?
That would have been when Doug Lang sent
When
me,
rough date?
I don't have
Ballpark.
that date.
But
I don't have
2006?
I don't have any of my records. At the same time that he sent me that
But
memorandum.
what era are we discussing?
Whenever, June 2005, whenever the investigation was closed down.
Because when you were asked on February 21st before this committee the following question, can you tell us who it was that removed Mr. Frizzell? You said, no, I'm not aware of who it was. Best I can state is that when Sergeant Frizzell left, I understand he returned to his home division, which was A Division. I'm being careful with regards to privacy issues here, but I understand it was for health reasons. So you said before this committee that only a month and a half ago, that you understood Mr. Frizzell had been removed for health reasons. But now you have produced this spectacular email documenting, basically illustrating a monster from whom people went screaming, who caused people to flee in terror, and who was impossible to work with. So which is it? You said here before this committee on February 21st that it was for health reasons that he'd been removed, but today you tell a story of his misconduct. Was it his misconduct that led to his removal, or was it health reasons, as you said last time?
When I spoke to you on February 21st, I understood that Frizzell had many problems leading with obsessiveness regarding the investigation, and finally he had gone off duty sick. The email that's being passed around now, is that David Gork's email? Because
yes.
I don't see it. Okay. Look at the date when David Gork responded back to me and gave me that information.
Yes,
that was information I did not have at that time.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, but I find that very difficult to believe, because you were head of human resources, and if someone in Mr. Frizzell's position had been removed for such spectacular cause as is described in this email, I find it very difficult to believe that you would not have been informed about that before.
I would not have been
email.
informed of that, except via Dave Gork at the time, if he so felt, because the decision would have been taken by the operating officer in charge of that investigation.
But you indicate now that you
Paul
had
Roy
found
had every
out.
right to remove any investigator that he deemed fit. He wouldn't have come and asked me.
Well,
And don't
once
forget,
again,
sir, there are 25,000 people in the RCMP.
Yes,
Many
I
of them
know.
go off on sick leave or other leave. I'm not informed.
Well, this wasn't just any one of 25,000
wasn't.
people. This was someone doing an investigation into misappropriation of funds. Mr. Frizzell, do you believe that your removal was related to the possibility that you would find Ms. George had illegally directed funds out of the insurance fund?
Yes.
Because today Ms. George has given a different story than she did on February 21st before this committee to explain your removal. She said health reasons on the 21st of February, and today she has an email describing you as someone of great misconduct.
Which I just received after my testimony on February 20th. I could not have given that information on February 21st as I did not have it, sir.
Yes, I know the date of the email indicates you did not have it, but I find it very hard to believe that if someone in your organization was removed because he sent people running out of meetings because he was borderline abusive, that you would not have had any idea of that until an email that you suddenly and miraculously received after you testified in this committee.
I testified
years after the event occurred.
I had no business to know this. This was an OPS investigation, and he could have removed or kept on anybody as he so wished.
How much time?
2.5.
2.5 minutes. Okay, well that I find very interesting and very difficult to believe, and I think you'll allow me to be skeptical. I'd like to talk about some of the contracting that went on in the NPCP program, the Compensation Policy Center. Yesterday, or last meetings, I brought with me this KPMG report, Mr. Frizzell, which demonstrates that, in one case, we have an individual, Mr. Krupe, who gave a contract to Consulting Audit Canada, which then gave a contract to Abotec, another company, in order to give the contract to Mr. Onischuk to write policies on contracting. So in other words, every one of these people I've just described took a cut of the cake as they went down the line. So it's like I take the contract here, I take a piece of the pie, I pass it to my friend, who then takes a piece of the pie, he passes it to his friend, and it gets down to the very end where Mr. Williams has it, and now he has my document. And he won't want to be touching that document because it's a contract for which you've just been paid, even though you've done absolutely nothing in the way of work. That's what this audit reveals. Were you finding these kinds of practices in that branch?
And more. It was also a matter of hiring your wife's friends and paying the contractor, using rough figures, paying them $400 a day for that person, and they would pay that person $100 a day. So these were the things that we did not follow up on, which to me, again, I was being obsessive, to me were pretty big deals when you're giving your buddy contracts for $400 a day and they're only paying the employee a fraction of that.
And in this case, Consulting and Audit Canada's official, Mr. Brazeau, was actually giving this contract for work of little or no value to his cousin. Were you aware that that was going on to his cousin, Mr. David Smith?
I did know they were related, but there was no question that it was being directed there just simply so Abotec could make some money.
And they did no work in exchange for that money?
No.
So a cousin gives, you know, I guess it's the old saying, we get by with a little help from our friends. You know, a cousin gives a contract to a cousin to pass the contract off to another individual to write policies on contracting. You know, I'll conclude by saying, you know, somebody up here is not giving the full picture, and I just want to thank Mr. McCauley and Mr. Frizzell for being here and answering some of these tough questions, because they've brought a lot of light to this situation, and that's why we need this independent investigator to do his work swiftly and, if necessary, to pursue an eventual public inquiry. So thank you very much for being here.
Thank you very much.
On a point of order.
Point of order, Mr. Williams.
I would ask that you again remind the witnesses that they are required to give fulsome answers, to tell all that they know to questions to a parliamentary committee. If you can advise them of that.
Well, Mr. Williams, I think I have advised them that already, and I think they all are aware of that, and they don't need to be advised again. Colleagues, I just want to schedule the rest of the meeting, but the bells, I understand, are ringing at 5:30. We can go 5 minutes into the bells. I have a couple of questions myself, and then I'm going to go to, we've got 7 more people on the list. I'll probably go 3.5 minutes, but I will use the gavel, and I apologize for that. It's going to be very firm. I have a question for you, Mr. Waugh. My understanding, there's a lot of talk about the situation about the removal of Mr. Frizzell from or Staff Sergeant Frizzell from this investigation. You said you were shutting the thing down right that day or the day after, and but the evidence is that you instructed Mr. Gork to have him removed. Is that correct?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to address that issue.
Okay.
The investigation took 15 months.
Yes.
When we got to the month of May, we had 4 interviews to do in order to complete the criminal part of the investigation. Throughout the investigation, there were several consultations with the provincial Crown Attorney as to the direction we should be going and what we need. At that point, I was satisfied that we had the information that was required for the provincial Crown Attorney to address. From that point on, investigators were allowed to return to their home unit at different dates once they were finished with the tasking that I had given to them. Mr. Frizzell stayed to the end of the investigation. Basically, we were vacating the location the last week of June. We were finished with the report. The brief to the Crown had been fully given to the Crown. meetings were ongoing between the Crown, myself, and Staff Sergeant Stéphane Saint-Jacques. And also, we were in the process of writing the report. There were no interviews to be done. The investigation was basically over. On June 20th, I informed Superintendent Doug Lang, who was my liaison officer in the absence of Assistant Commissioner Gork when he was in Lyon, France. And I informed it that it was time for Mike to go back. However, there were tasks to be done before he leave, which was basically to package his notebooks, emails, which is what we were doing to vacate, basically.
You were the investigator in charge.
Yes, I was.
We've heard testimony from Ms. George that this gentleman was removed because of all the offensive behavior, which I'll not go into all now. Do you agree with that, or do you disagree with it?
There were some conflicts during the course of the investigation that Staff Sergeant Frizzell was involved with. However, they were manageable from my perspective, and it was reported to me that we could go along right to the end. He had a report to produce. He was a valuable member in a sense that he had a lot of information to offer, and I needed his input for the final report. And once that was done, that's when I informed Superintendent Doug Lang, and I also informed Assistant Commissioner Gork, because I spoke to him on the phone that week, because he was returning to Ottawa from Lyon in order to attend a meeting the first week of the last week of June or first week of July. And Assistant Commissioner Gork was aware because I briefed him on ongoing resource issues, which included comportment of RCMP members, because I did not have jurisdiction over the comportment of these officers.
So this suggestion that Mr. Frizzell, Staff Sergeant Frizzell, was removed from this investigation based upon your instructions is not a correct suggestion.
I don't agree with the term removed. He was not removed. He was returned to his home unit once the criminal investigation was over.
So all this evidence that we heard about the order being served on Staff Sergeant Mike Frizzell, having to deal with the way he was interviewing, etc., you, as the chief investigator of this very extensive file, do not agree with that evidence.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, but I have not seen that document that you're talking about.
Well, but you've heard about it. The evidence.
I've heard about it.
You've heard it here, Mr.
Yes.
That the evidence was clear that because of the way he was interviewing, the way he was conducting himself, the decision was made at the highest levels of the RCMP to have him taken off this investigation. There was a suggestion that this was done on your behest. You're saying it wasn't done on your behest, but now my secondary question is the evidence that they used to serve the order. I know you haven't seen the order. You don't agree with it?
No, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. I just want to clarify this. It was done on my behalf. Certainly, it was done on my behalf that he was to return to his home unit. And there were some situations over the course of the investigation, yes.
But did you ask, and I know you didn't have jurisdiction over this gentleman, did you ask the senior officials, the people that you had liaison with, did you ask that Staff Sergeant Frizzell be removed from this investigation because of his behavior?
I asked that he be returned to his home unit once the investigation was over.
Well, of course. Well, I guess we're not going to get to the bottom of it. So, and again, colleagues, it's 3 minutes. These are going to be short snappers. I'd ask that you conduct yourself accordingly. Mr. Wisniewski, you have 3 minutes, and the gavel comes down.
Sure. Mr. Waugh, you used to work for the Ottawa Police. Did you ever work for, or were you seconded to work for the RCMP?
Yes, I was for 1 year in 2001.
Who did you work for?
I worked for understand.
Did you work under Miss George?
I did. I worked
Who did
for
you? I
Chief
see.
Superintendent,
And
Chief
who did you
Superintendent
work
Cal
next?
Corley,
Okay.
and following that, Ms. George came
Okay.
in the picture.
Okay, so you worked under Miss George previously to this criminal investigation. Who did you work next to? Did you work
I worked,
near Ms. Rosalie Burton, next to her?
I worked mostly with Mr. Fraser McCauley. I worked with Dennis Fodor, and Ms. Burton came in the picture about halfway through my secondment with the RCMP, yes.
I see. Mr. Ivanovich was appointed by former Commissioner Zach Cardelli. A criminal investigation begins 2 days into it. When he hears about it, he shuts it down. After the efforts of a number of whistleblowers, finally the inquiry comes to a conclusion. Mr. Zach Cardelli instructs quite clearly Ms. George to have, he removes Mr. Ivanovich, she removes Mr. Krupe. The guidelines, Public Service Staff Relations Act say that he's to leave without pay. However, he continues to receive pay. It's quite an amazing tale. Ms. Burton, you are a person of interest. We've just heard of minutes of meetings that don't reflect what took place in those meetings. Ms. Burton, I'm just curious, because there's so many interconnecting relationships here. When did you first meet Mr. Ivanovich?
Oh, I met Jim Ivanovich several years ago when I was a student at the University of Ottawa, and I had a panel of guest speakers in. I was the vice president of the Human Resources Committee, and I invited speakers in from public and private sector to share.
So, thank you.
Career.
And did you previously work with him also at Treasury Board, or subsequently?
I worked for him at the Treasury Board Secretariat, yes.
Okay, and did Mr. Ivanovich, in fact, recruit you to come over to the RCMP? I think you stated that previously.
No, I did not state that previously.
Or, well, did he?
No, he did not.
Mm-hmm. Did he have anything to do with having you regularized as a public service employee?
Regularized as a public service employee?
Yes.
That's 20-odd years ago you're asking me to recall. No, actually, it was Larry McCloskey, Director of the Public Service Commission.
Mr. Sweet, 3 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, quickly, Mr. Roy, did Sergeant Frizzell understand the intricacies of the investigation? He worked with you for quite some time on this.
Yes, he did.
He did clearly? There was no doubt in your mind he understood it clearly?
He understood.
I have a real problem, Madam George. You know, we've got Assistant Commissioner Gork is moved to France. Sergeant Frizzell is removed from the investigation. Superintendent McCauley seconded to D&D. Denise Ravine, after 33 years, her job is dissolved. Jim Ivanovich and Dominic Krupe are suspended with pay. Junior officer actually initiates an investigation insubordinately with a division commander and is not disciplined for it. John Spice, as the integrity officer, is gone. And it's no doubt in my mind that the circumstances seem out of control here when everybody that was involved in the investigation, seemingly, is, you know, absent without leave. Sergeant Frizzell, could you tell me, you just mentioned in your testimony earlier that you felt that Barbara George was involved in misappropriation of funds. Is that correct?
Yes.
Could you please expand on that for me? What were the indications that that was the case?
I explained to Ms. George in person and in great detail, and apparently, according to Mr. Gore, quite simply, the whole insurance deal, why money was being taken out of the members' insurance plans without authorization and without any legislative support. So she very well knew, even not taking into account that she's in charge of that unit. And I found documentation, or actually I was told that it was orders from her as to why the almost $600,000 was taken out of the insurance funds in March of 2005.
Okay. Quickly, Mr. Roy, is it uncommon for an investigative officer to use a baited voicemail message in order to extract truthful testimony from a witness? Is that uncommon or inappropriate?
I'm not saying it's inappropriate.
Thank you very much. So you're saying that, Mr. Frizzell, that these issues with the pension and the insurance fund continued after Mr. Ivanovich was gone?
Yes.
Okay. And in the voicemail you tabled in the committee, you referred to a meeting with Paul Gauvin. What was said at that meeting?
Well, that's up for debate. What I heard at that meeting was that the RCMP, the commissioner, had asserted.
Go ahead, finish.
The commissioner had asserted that it was indeed the RCMP's responsibility to administer the insurance funds. This was less than 2 weeks after 4 of our members were gunned down at Mayerthorpe, so it was a very sensitive issue. He asserted, of course, the RCMP was responsible for the administration. They would take over it right away. The money would no longer be drained from the members' accounts, but they would have to go to Treasury Board to see if they could get authorization to pay back all the money that had been drained over the years.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sweet. Monsieur Lucier, 3 minutes.
Mr. Paul Roy, in your opening statement, you mentioned your years of service, and you talked about the section of economic crimes. Was that the last section you worked for? Yes. Are you also familiar with the IMET units, Integrated Market Enforcement Teams? Are you familiar with them? No, I'm not familiar with them. Are you talking about an RCMP unit? It's a joint RCMP Ottawa Police unit. Oh, you're talking about the investigation section? We call it the high-tech crime unit. Joint Security Intelligence Unit. Are you familiar with this unit? Well, the names are a little different from the ones we used. Had you already worked with Mr. David Brown? No. You don't know him? No, I don't know him. I don't know him. Thank you. Mr. Frizzell, when you were removed from your position, it says in this document here that you were kicked out of your office fairly quickly. You were evicted from your office, and that information in your computer had been destroyed. Is that correct?
I was not removed from the office. I was given the order, and it basically said, get out, but only after you've cleaned up. After thinking about it a short time, I decided that I would just get out. I left my computer behind, because it belongs to the RCMP, not to me. But yes, it was wiped, and I found that highly unusual.
Est-ce que vous avez perdu les informations?
Did you lose any information, any data?
I lost all the data.
Est-ce que ces informations...
Are there backups of that data anywhere?
I have some of it on a jump drive, but it went missing from my desk shortly after. It actually went missing from my desk in August of 2005. So there are no more backups.
Merci. Monsieur Roy, est-ce que les...
Mr. Roy, the amounts of money removed from the pension fund, have they been repaid? Did your investigation go so far as to identify who removed the money and who put it in? We identified the removal of some amounts which were directed to certain programs. These amounts were identified, and at a certain point we were advised that some amounts were returned into the pension fund. Thank you very much.
Ms. George, this is baffling to me as I go through this. I go back to yesterday and Mr. Zaccardelli and talking about just how it seems like every time anybody got close to anything, they were removed, and this obviously was probably one of the most important things going on, at least in the long term, one of the most important things going on in the RCMP. at the time. And so Macaulay comes forward, and not for any good reason, not because he was wrong or did anything illegal or anything like that. He was removed, actually, it sounds like for his own benefit. He was removed from any access to any of the information. And then shortly afterwards, Denise Ravine was gone. She was removed from access to any kind of information. Not too long, well, I guess later it would have been Gork, Deputy Commissioner Gork was removed, sent to France. And then it doesn't look so good, as you can imagine, for us here. And we're sitting here, we're faced with 3 members in uniform here, at least one of whom isn't telling the truth based on testimony that we've heard. And it's hard. I'm sure it's very difficult for people that are watching this to believe what is going on with this great institution. I want to know, first of all, I'm going back to this thing about Frizzell. Mike, sorry, well, I'll call you Mike because I'm Mike. Are you okay? There's privacy concerns. You're okay with your privacy now if she tells what those health reasons were that she couldn't say for privacy reasons before?
I believe what Ms. George has said is any health reasons I may or may not have had occurred after I was given the order, not before.
So, Ms. George, what were the health reasons? I mean, you said clearly here that there was a reason you couldn't say the full story last time, but you definitely understood that it was for health reasons.
I believe those were stress-related at the time.
Okay. But now we find out that there's all sorts of issues here regarding witnesses, members of the RCMP in tears, and people running out of offices screaming. And now you were the chief human resources officer at the time. Would someone running out of an office in tears, would that be considered a human resources issue? Would that be normal? Would that be not something that would be brought to your department's attention? That there's a monster on the loose and people are running away from him in tears?
Nobody used the word monster on the loose, sir. When my DG, Rosalie Burton, came and said, Barb, people are running out of the office in tears, upset. Their units are seeing them, and they're chasing them out of the office. That, to me, spoke of a potential harassment behavior. And I did my due diligence. I called and I asked that Sergeant Frizzell be spoken with and asked to temper his...
Aware of people running out in tears?
From my DG, yes.
So this isn't this information that was sent to you on February 25th isn't new. You were actually aware of those things at the time.
That's why I made the call to Assistant Commissioner LaFosse. Now, whether this is the same information, I don't know, because there are other instances that Dave Gork writes in where interviews, according to Dave Gork, okay, where interviews were lost because Sergeant Frizzell became overly emotional.
To move on, Mike, I'm sorry. It's Mr. Christopherson, 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chair. And, Chair, just to advise that at the end of the meeting, I'd like the opportunity to place a motion that would have us return this panel of witnesses for a further meeting. Ms. Burton, you in your opening statement, you said one of the employees identified for surplus was Denise Ravine. This would be as a result of the restructuring. Is that the reason that she no longer had a job, was because you restructured and she was just, the music stopped and there was no chair for her to sit down on?
No, prior to my arrival, there was a decision taken and 12 individuals identified to be declared surplus. Denise Ravine was one of the 12, and the file indicated that was on or before September 11th, 2003.
Okay, thank you. The Deputy Commissioner gave testimony at our last, or at an earlier meeting, that for the 3rd time, Sergeant Frizzell left for health reasons. The deputy testified that Mr. Krupe left for health reasons, and you should know that the deputy testified that Ms. Ravine had health issues. So I'm having trouble with this. Was it because it was restructured, or was there health reasons? Which was it, in your opinion?
I implemented the budget decisions that were made prior to my arrival. That was the only information I had at that time, as I recall.
Thank you. Ms. Ravine states that her position was cut. She said that under oath. A further quote, I was the only one who did not have a position identified. In April, they gave me a letter saying that my position was being abolished. and the deputy commissioner had said that I believe that on her doctor's orders she had been precluded from working within the office, and I believe there are issues there. We have accommodated her, and as I said, she has been working from home. Again, the testimony leads one to believe that this great favor was being done for Ms. Ravine, who had problems, but you're suggesting to us that it was for structural reasons. You stand by it was... Let me ask you this question. Did anybody at all ever have any discussions to you in any regard at all with respect to her position within the organization of Ms. Ravine, about her? Did anybody ever talk to you about her in any way, shape, or form, about her work, her job, her future, anything? Ever? Anyone that you can recall?
I can recall having a conversation. She was declared surplus. She received her letter in April, and that was based on a budget decision. That's the information I had at that time. I can recall a conversation down the road that I had with a peer of mine, a Director General in Human Resources, Assistant Commissioner Kevin Mole, and I asked him if he had meaningful work for Denise Ravine. She was a PE6 director level. If you do, would you please contact her directly and make arrangements as soon as possible? And he did, to the best of my knowledge, do that. So I did have that conversation with him, but it was several months, a couple months later.
Time again? Yeah, okay.
Okay, Mr. Wisniewski, 3 minutes.
Ms. Ravine whistleblows on potential criminality, serious criminality involving Mr. Ivanovich. She goes to her superior, Mr. Macaulay. Mr. Ivanovich, who you've known since your university days, invited him to university to a panel, and soon afterwards, Ms. Ravine is deemed surplus. Mr. Macaulay is moved off by Mr. Zaccardelli to D&D, and Mr. Ivanovich selects you, Ms. Burton, to replace Mr. Macaulay in his position. Is that correct?
My understanding was that it was not Mr. Ivanovich that selected me to replace Chief Superintendent Fraser Macaulay.
Mr. Macaulay, would you like to clarify that?
There would be a selection board through run by, at that time, I believe, well, it would have been Barb Georgia was the Assistant Commissioner of EODR at that point. Now her that would be her role, along with the Senior Executive Committee that makes that decision.
Thank you. Deputy Commissioner George, on December 17th, 2003, you received a formal complaint alleging fraudulent activity in the accrual, usage, and cash out of leave for Mr. Ivanovich. In your response to the complaint, you indicate that you were satisfied that Assistant Commissioner Gork had conducted a very in-depth and professional investigation and that the conclusions were sound. Chair, I'll be tabling some additional documents today. I've already tabled leave documents recording that on January 6, 2004, 2 weeks after you received the complaint and the investigation had already been initiated, the leave file was significantly altered. Deputy Commissioner George, is that not obstruction of justice?
That leave file was not in my hands, and I don't believe Jim Ivanovich had it in his hands either.
Is that not obstruction of justice?
I'd have to look at the file. This was turned over to Dave Gork, who undertook that investigation.
If it's correct that it was adjusted 2 weeks afterwards, is that not obstruction of justice?
Mr. Wisniewski, with all due respect, I'd have to ask you a question as an investigator. Was the leave file updated? Had it been left unupdated? I don't know what happened there, so I can't answer.
So we have now heard allegations of the destruction of evidence and now of alteration of documents, alteration of minutes, and we also have now heard that there's been communications with the government, with the Ministry of Justice, deciding what evidence will be brought forward before us. Thank you, Chair.
I don't know exactly which one to address, but I'll talk about the leave document. Oftentimes, people have leave documents. Anybody can have a leave document, and they have taken leave, but they have not updated. Now, I cannot speak for Mr. Ivanovich. He's not here. I don't know whether his staff updated his document to show that time had been taken. That should have been looked at by Assistant Commissioner Gork when he undertook the whole investigation into Mr. Ivanovich's Lee file.
Thank you very much. Mr. Fitzpatrick, 3 minutes.
I just, Ms. Burton, you were in charge of the insurance end of the operation, and you must have been questioned by Sergeant Frizzell. Did you find his kind of questioning personally harassing to yourself?
So I just want to be very clear here.
Just answer my question, please.
The insurance.
Yes or no?
The insurance program is chaired by a deputy commissioner of Central Region, and I'm not in charge of the insurance program.
Did you find the investigation harassing when he was questioning you?
He did not interview me as a witness, sir.
Okay. And the...
Is that true?
Okay.
Obviously, I didn't make much of an impression.
And a point, Mr. Frizzell, let's get it out there. When you're under suspicion of wrongdoing and you're being investigated, is it not unusual for the wrongdoer to believe that he's being harassed a bit?
And normally, you're let know that of these allegations as well.
Right, especially if you're involved with the RCMP, I would think you would jump to that conclusion. I want to get to the outsourcing thing, and Mr. Watt, this is very important. I want you to give a clear-cut answer on this and not beat around the bush on it. Did this investigation try to pursue all of these multiple contracts for little or no value with the outsourcing scheme? Did this investigation go down that avenue and thoroughly investigate this area? Yes or no?
We investigated all the contracts from the outsourcing.
So Mr. Smith and Abitech and all these groups, you investigated those matters?
Yes.
Okay.
That specific contract that you're referring to was packaged as a result of discussion with the Crown and was put on its own and is being investigated by A Division RCMP.
Okay.
It is being investigated.
And did Ms. Burton, this is very careful too, did Ms. Burton ever contact you and indicate to you that Sergeant Frizzell was being abusive and harassing in his way he was carrying on things? Think carefully about the answer.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Did Ms. Burton ever contact you during the investigation and suggest to you that Sergeant Frizzell was being a little bit too aggressive and abusive in his investigation?
Yes, she did.
Okay.
Yes, she did.
Okay. And did you have any discussions after that with Commissioner George, Deputy Commissioner George on that? Okay. Mr. Paulrou's got an area he wants to pursue.
Yes. Did you say that that contract is under investigation, the Abitech contract? You say that is under investigation now? Or
I don't know if it is under investigation now, but it was handed off to A Division.
It was handed off to A Division. We don't know what happened.
For further investigation, criminal investigation.
Okay. Ms. George, can you tell me, has that investigation through A Division gone anywhere?
I'm not in charge of A Division. I'm sorry, I have no knowledge of that.
Can we get a copy of the tape, just to conclude, the tape that is mentioned in this email, this famous email that we've received, thread point from David Gork? He describes this spectacular moment with Mr. Frizzell becoming emotional and ending the interview unprofessionally. You say it says here that this is on tape. Can you have that tape tabled for this committee?
I have no access to my office, but I will certainly make that request for you. And by the way,
you're obviously in contact with Mr. Gork because you've got this email here. So
read the date of that email, please.
Well, we'd like to. I just like to see this tape. Hear this tape. Sounds fascinating.
I think is that tape not the tape that we're talking about that was played here and we transcribed? It's not.
No.
Okay. Well, perhaps if I can get from you, Deputy Commissioner.
We can just send a request to the commissioner directly. We'll get the clerk to do it.
Okay. Then I have one question again, and I'm just going to spend a minute on it. I'm going to go back to you, Inspector Waugh. It's an interesting issue. It's an interesting point here about Staff Sergeant Frizzell's removal. And you were, and I'm going to come back, you were the chief investigator. This was supposedly an independent investigation. It was your decision as to who was doing what. If there was any impropriety, wrong interviews, aggressiveness, harassment, it was your problem. And it was your problem to deal with it. Did you, now I know you answered the question before, you said because the investigation was over, you wanted everyone returned to their previous positions. Did you ask Barbara George or Gork or anyone else to have Staff Sergeant Frizzell removed because of improper behavior?
I asked David Gork to have him removed because of improper behavior and also because the investigation was over.
Okay, and what was the nature of this improper behavior?
There were several incidents during the course of the investigation.
And what were these incidents?
And I would have to go back and get the details of this, Mr. Chair. I do not have my...
Okay, I'm going to get an undertaking from you. If you could do that, get the details as to why you went to Mr. Gork with this and provide that to the committee in writing. So, yes.
I just have to say again, you questioned Mr. Raw about this particular issue, and he mentioned that he had problems, there had been problems with Staff Sergeant Frizzell. But he did not give us the information, and he practically circled and went all the way around and avoided giving us the information that he had talked to Deputy Commissioner Gork, or Assistant Commissioner Gork. And they are required, Mr. Chairman, to give fulsome answers to this committee. No beating around the bush, no evasiveness, no half-truths, bit of truth, or some of the truth. We are entitled to fulsome answers, and I want to know why police officers at this committee are finding that they have to evade giving decent and fulsome answers when they're asked simple and direct questions.
Well, Mr. Williams, you're quite correct. I asked the question before. He said there were issues, but they were quite manageable. Now we're getting a different story. So it's disturbing. I know that. Okay. The bells are ringing. Now, Mr. Christopherson, you got a motion. There is a meeting of the steering committee on Monday. Would you prefer to?
I think I have enough votes now. I'd like to proceed.
You have enough votes now. I see. That's reassuring. That's democracy in action. This will only take a minute. Witnesses, just remain where you are. This will only take a minute, I'll guarantee it. Mr. Christopherson has a motion. I'm going to ask Mr. Christopherson to read it or to put it on the record.
Thank you very much, Chair. I move that the Standing Committee on Public Accounts hold another meeting with the same witnesses who appeared on April 18th, 2007, and that Ms. Denise Ravine be invited back to this meeting also.
Okay, before that goes any further, Mr. Christopherson, as he knows, needs unanimous consent to take it any further. Does Mr. Christopherson have unanimous consent? Okay, then. Then I'm going to proceed right to the question because the bells are ringing. All in favor of the Mr. Christopherson's motion?
Yeah. Okay.
Motion contrary-minded, motion carried. Now we have another motion from Mr. Rezniski, but again, I will just take that as notice and put it in the next.
I could read the motion, Chair, and we'll see whether or not there's unanimous consent on this. If not, then we'll have to wait till the next meeting. I would request that retired RCMP Sergeant Keith Estabrooks appear before the Public Accounts Committee and to bring along all relevant documents and files which indicate the suppression of access to information request by Mr. Gauvin. As well, I would request that retired RCMP Sergeant Keith Estabrooks bring along with him the files with the following ATIP numbers involving pension fund investigation. And I list off the numbers.
You don't have to read them. Okay, before this goes any further, Mr. Rezniski needs unanimous consent to table or discuss the motion. Does Mr. Rezniski have unanimous consent?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to say no, and I'll tell you why. Because we're talking about boxes of documents that are not translated, 99% chance. You can't come in here with boxes of documents and quote from them ad hoc when other committee members can't even have access to them. Now, if the steering committee want to bring this gentleman forward, I don't have a problem, but let's translate all the documents before they come here so that everybody has access to them. Let's do it properly through the
Okay,
steering
Mr. Williams, you made your point. Mr. Rosnicki does not have...
Point of order.
I'm not going
Point
to...
of order. Point of order.
You do not have
Point of
unanimous
order.
consent.
Point of order. Actually, I don't think we have a problem with Mr. Wisniewski's motion. If I've heard right, the only stipulation is that relevant documents be translated. So if we can just add that. Is that a friendly amendment?
Chair.
Okay, here we go.
Yes, it's a friendly amendment, Chair.
Friendly amendment, accepted.
Well, that's not what Mr. Williams said, but I mean...
that's the way I understood it, Chair.
Well, he said no. I asked him unanimous consent. He said no.
Chair?
There was no...
I have
no problem with the witness coming forward, Mr. Chairman, provided the documents are translated and distributed before he gets here.
Friendly amendment?
Wonderful. Friendly
Absolutely.
amendment?
Okay, here we go.
Does Mr. Rosnicki, I want to go back to does Mr. Rosnicki have unanimous consent to put the motion as amended? Yes. Oh, okay. Okay, we've all heard...
Avec les documents traduits, c'est ça? Oui.
Okay, all in favor of the motion? Motion carried.
Thank the witnesses.
Okay, in closing, I want to thank the witnesses again. I know it's been a quick ending, and I know this is a difficult issue for a lot of people, so I want to thank you for your appearance here.